Welcome, everyone, to our Lunch and Learn for this month. The topic is your food, fibs, and facts. Joining me today is Kim Woods, our livestock agent in Person and Granville counties, as well as Johnny Coley, our horticulture agent in Person and Granville counties. And if you don't know who I am Jennifer Brown, family consumer science agent in Person and Granville counties. So today we are going to talk about what all of these different labels mean. We're going to provide you information on food waste, as well as how to really navigate understanding what you're purchasing, as well as we want you to understand the food system and the cycle that your food goes through before it gets to your home. We're going to be recording this lesson, and we will send it out after this afternoon. And we will also put everybody on mute, but if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. We'll try to answer them as we go. And let's get started. So the first question I have for you guys to type some stuff in the chat is, what are some of the things that come to your mind when you think of agriculture and your food system? Okay, so just take a second and type some different things into the chat. Some of you have said nutrition, health, eating, producing of food, animals, food safety. Okay, you guys, thanks for those good answers as well. So we're going to talk about all of those topics at least some point today, because they're all very important when we're talking about our food. So we're going to talk about the food system elements today. And this is a cycle right here you can see of how our food is produced, how it's distributed, how it's processed, marketing, the purchasing aspect of it, when you get it home and you're preparing it, consuming it, as well as what happens after, you either don't consume it and you have to throw it away, or some of the scraps or different things. So the food system is not just one piece of it. When we talk to the kids in schools, they often focus on, well, I get it at the grocery store, and they know nothing about the entire first half of the presentation. So we want to talk about all of it, and we want you to understand different pieces of it, because agriculture is all of it put together. If you take one of those things out of it, the system will break down or there'll be problems. You saw that this past year. We had an issue with, some of the food processing, because there weren't enough workers in some of the processing plants for the animals. We've had it where there's been droughts, and there's been a food recall, and there's been a problem with food production, that supply. There can be natural disasters, and it can happen with distribution, trying to get the trucks there. There's too much debris and different things. So there can be breakdowns in all of the different systems. So we want you to kind of understand the different areas within agriculture and the food systems and how they kind of work together. So you guys answered one question. We're going to ask you another question. What are some of the buzzwords that you hear about or you think about when you hear about foods? When you hear someone say foods, what comes to your mind? It might be some of the buzzwords we told you we're going to talk about today, and that's fine. You can either speak up or just type it in the chat. That's fine too. Okay. Organic is one of the ones. Just health. Yeah, just thinking about your overall health and wellness. Why we all need food, but we want it to be healthy, or at least that's my goal. I know, I get questions about, preservatives. I get questions about pesticides. I get questions about just the nutrition. Which one's better for me than this? Or maybe you're on a special diet and you need to stay away from this and get more of this. Genetically modified foods, too many additives, processing and cleanliness. So yeah, you guys have hit on a lot of those buzzwords that we're going to talk about today. So our presentation is pretty much about the most common food labels is what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about these different labels. You might have seen some of these on your foods, and you probably, like me, when I first saw them, I had no clue what they meant. But we're going to give you some information about each of these, as well as just some, maybe not picture labels, but just some words that they might have on their products. So now I'm going to give the presentation over to Johnny to talk a little bit more about pesticides.
Yeah, that seemed to be a concern in the chats was the pesticides. So I wanted to start out by just maybe defining pesticides. A lot of times we think of pesticides as being insecticides, but insecticides, fungicides, bactericides, herbicides, all of them fall under the category of pesticides. So anything that we use to spray to kill a pest would be considered a pesticide. So the question we're posing here is, why do we need pesticides? And I guess advance the slide. I'm not. All right, so let's go back to the why do we. Let me answer that question back. There we go. Sorry, Jennifer. Go back one more, Jennifer. All right, so the reason we need the pesticides that we spray is in order to raise more food, in order for the crops to be more, or for the farmers to be more productive in raising food. About a third of the food would be lost, or a third of the crops would be lost if we did not have pesticides. So while we have to be careful of spraying pesticides, we want to definitely be cautious on that. But we enjoy food being at a cheaper price because of pesticides, because we have a lot less farmers now raising the food that we eat. We have to get as much production out of those acres that are being grown, and pesticides enable us to do that, and so that we get more production out of the land that is being farmed. So that is one of the reasons that pesticides are needed. All right, let's go to the next slide. And this is a big concern. A lot of people are concerned about the pesticides that are sprayed on their products, on the produce, or whatever they may be consuming. And they can be dangerous if used off label, or if they are not properly used. But pesticides that are used, according to label, and everything is followed as the pesticide is supposed to be used, then pesticides. I never use the word safe and pesticides together, because they just don't go together. But they are a tool that farmers use, and farmers, they don't want to abuse pesticides. A lot of times, farmers get accused of abusing pesticides. They do not want to abuse pesticides, because if that pesticide no longer works, or that pesticide is taken off the market for some reason, then that's a tool off their tool shed, or out of their toolbox, that they can't use anymore to grow crops and be as productive as they can. So they won't, and plus that they cost. So it's a cost for the farmers. So they don't want to use pesticides any more than they have to. But at times they do have to use them and get them to be as productive as they can. Some concerns are that these pesticides are being taken into our bodies, and they are having adverse effects. And we'll cover this, I think, in the next slide. Go ahead to the next one, Jennifer. Let's see if we do cover this. Yeah. So oat cereal, any oat cereals have been a concern as far as glyphosate being sprayed on this particular product, and how much residue is still there. Well, this is it sort of tells you how much you would have to eat on a daily basis, and this is every day for the rest of an adult life, you'd have to eat 81 pounds of oat cereal every day just to meet the EPA's pesticide residue limit. And that limit is below the threshold of what would be carcinogenic or what would be considered harmful. So you can see, that it would take a lot just to meet what EPA says is okay for the residue on that particular product. So it's regulated. Pesticides are regulated, and farmers cannot go above a certain threshold. On the same token, so is disease and insects regulated when they take it to the producers. For example, corn, fresh corn, if it's taken to the market, and if from my understanding, one worm is found in that that whole truckload of corn, that whole truckload can be rejected. So farmers have to to meet regulations on both sides. They can't have they can't have insects in their food either. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, this is a question. This is going to be a question, and you can answer it in the chat of whether you think this is a fib or a fact. So let's say what's that first question, Jennifer? Organic produce is grown without pesticides. Is that fact or fib? Organic produce is grown without pesticides. If you want to just put that in the chat. Seen a lot of fibs, fibs. All right. A lot of fibs there. Okay. Let's go to the next slide then. You're right. Most everybody, I think, put in fib, and organic produce is not necessarily grown without pesticides. In fact, it's usually not grown without pesticides. What organic produce, it is regulated, and you cannot use certain pesticides on organic products as they're being raised. They have to be approved by a particular organization, OMRI approved pesticides. And these are pesticides that are derived from a natural source. Does that make them safer? Not necessarily. Talking to the weed specialist, or a weed specialist at NC State, one of the most dangerous herbicides he sprays in some of his trials is pelargonic acid. And pelargonic acid is labeled organic, but it is very toxic if you're well, not so much toxic, but it'll burn you. If you get it in your eyes or anything, it's can be very dangerous. So it's not that the organic products are necessarily safer, but they are derived from a natural source. So I mentioned the herbicide, copper sulfate is another natural fungicide that can be used. Dipel or Bacillus thuringiensis is another natural source that kills insects, caterpillars, mainly caterpillars. It's not gonna kill anything but listed for caterpillars. But OMRI, which is Organic Materials Review Institute, has the responsibility to make sure that these products that are being sprayed on an organic system is safe to be sprayed. All right. All right. So just to sort of reiterate this, organic farming is about the production methods that are used, and it's not the nutritional value. So if you see organic, and that's a lot of times what we see. And Jennifer, you want to go ahead to the next slide? Organic doesn't mean healthy. It doesn't mean that it's pesticide free, as we just talked about. We can have pesticides sprayed on organic products. Organic doesn't mean family farm, doesn't mean local, doesn't mean fresh, doesn't mean better. It doesn't mean any of these, but when we see that word organic, we often think about these particular things that organic is. It is, as Jennifer mentioned, it's one of those buzzwords that we think about when we see, and it makes us feel like we're buying a fresher, better, healthier food, and it not necessarily so. All right. Fib or fact? Another question, fib or fact? Land must be free of synthetic pesticides, man-made pesticides, for 3 years before you can start growing organic produce. So if they have a field and a farmer has a field that's been synthetic pesticides have been used on that field, the question here is, does it have to lay fallow for 3 years before you can start? Is that a fact or a fib? Somebody says fact. Another fact. Oh, got a fib in there. Any others? All right. We'll go ahead, Jennifer, to the next slide. And that is a fact. So land that has been used in conventional, we'll say use the term conventional methods of farming, does have to lay fallow. It cannot have any pesticides, synthetic pesticides sprayed on it for 3 years before it starts the organic process of raising vegetables on that. And this is certified. You have to be a certified organic farmer in order to put the label USDA certified on a product. It has to go through a certification, and this is one of the things that has to be done before you can get that USDA certification. Is you have to have 3 years without synthetic products being put on that. And there are other things as well. There's inspections, and there's they have to keep very strict records in order to keep that certification.
All right, Johnny, I have a question. I'm not sure I'm using the chat correctly. Are my answers, this is Ellen, showing up? We'll see next time if my answers are showing up. I'm not sure if they are. I'm typing it in, but then do I have to do something else?
You have to hit enter. Just hit enter. If you type it in, hit enter, you should get.
Okay. All right. I wasn't doing that, I don't think.
All right. All right, Jennifer, let's go to the next slide. All right, another fib or fact. Apples are on the list of genetically modified foods. Are apples on the GMO list? A fact or a fib? Fact, a lot of facts here. Yeah, we got you, Ellen, that time. There you go, fact. We got a smart group here today. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. That is a fact. Apples are on the genetically modified list. They were genetically modified in 2017 in order to have less browning. That's what they were genetically modified for, was so they would not brown as quick after they were cut or bitten into. That browning or senescing wouldn't be as quickly to occur is the reason. So that's the little gene that they turned off on the apples. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. So that brings up, what are GMOs? And GMOs, as the slide before said, it's genetically modified organisms. And this is when in the lab they go into and they can turn particular cells or genes off and on, depending on what they need to do. It's, we've been crossbreeding plants for years. In fact, we don't have genetically modified sunflowers, but sunflowers have been planted and sprayed with glyphosate, and then taken the ones that didn't die from that, and they take it and produce more plants from those, and they get the seeds, they reproduce those, spray those glyphosate, and they go through several generations like that. And that's a natural way, or cross, not really crossbreeding, but a natural way to modify plants growth. And then you finally get a generation that you can spray glyphosate over, and they don't, they're not affected that bad. So there's a natural way, and then there's the laboratory way. The laboratory way just allows us to do it quicker. I don't know how they did the vaccine for COVID. I'm not going to pretend to, but by being able to do this, it might have sped up that process some. It can in some instances. I'm not going to say it did with with this one, but medicines like insulin can be created just quicker and be produced more rapidly. So rather than have to go through generations of processing, the GMOs allow us, or the GMO process allows us to get our end result quicker. All right. So these are some GMOs in the U.S. that we have, and as we can see, apples is on there. Corn, most people are familiar with corn being a GMO. Soybeans, another big food. A lot of things are made from soybeans. So we have lots of GMO products in the U.S. that are used.
Okay, so hey everybody, I think it's my turn now. We're going to switch over, so hopefully everybody can hear me. And we're going to talk a little bit about livestock production. As Jennifer said, I'm the livestock agent for both Person and Granville counties, and my family and I also have a small farm. So I do some of this that we're going to talk about to some extent. So I've got some personal experiences to go along with the facts that I'm going to share with you. So following Johnny's lead, we've got some questions for you. So fib or fact, and I'll let Jennifer put the first question up there. So hormone use in livestock production causes early onset of puberty in children. Does everybody think that's fact or fib? And just type in the chat box like we've been doing. Fact, fib, 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 fib. Fact. Okay, so we've got some folks on both sides of that statement. All right, I'll let Jennifer go ahead and go to the next slide, and we can see that is a fib. That is a fib. So a lot of people feel that is the case, but natural hormone production of both androgens like testosterone and estrogens that we produce in our bodies naturally is several thousand times higher in content than the amount of any of those compounds that might be in a normal serving of beef. And so just the amount of any of those compounds that you might intake when consuming beef is so minuscule in comparison to what you produce in your own body naturally. And I'm going to show you a slide here in a minute, very small compared to a lot of other food products that are out there. So there's actually been plenty of studies indicating that hormone use does not cause early onset of puberty in children. And just for an example, when we start thinking about maybe not boys so much so as girls, but at an early age, girls become very aware of what they look like, their body type. They, maybe want to try and not gain too much weight or be thin because that's the image that is, projected to everybody all the time. And so a lot of times young girls will eat a lot of chicken as opposed to beef or pork or anything else. They eat a lot of chicken. And there is no added hormones used in poultry production in the United States. So just from that standpoint, thinking about what a lot of young girls might eat, that just does not really hold any truth to it. So, all right, Jennifer, we'll go ahead and move to the next slide. And here's that chart that I showed you. So if you look on the left-hand side down towards the bottom, if you eat beef that has not had any additional hormones implanted, it's going to be 2 nanograms of like an estrogen type product in that beef. If it is implanted, it's going to be 3 nanograms. And then you can see moving on up, milk has 15, butter has 151. You get on higher up into like soy flour, because that's derived from soybeans, has, let's see, what's that number? 342,468,000 nanograms of an estrogen substance in it. And those are just, foods that you might consume for whatever reason. Over on the right-hand side of that chart, you can see how many nanograms would be just in, a prepubescent child, an adult man, an adult woman, and then a pregnant woman. So those are just naturally occurring hormones in our body. And just for another little drive at home point, an adult male would have to eat 27 steers worth of beef that's been implanted with hormones every day to match his own estrogen projection. So even men produce estrogen, and an adult female would have to eat 95.3 steers worth of beef to match her own natural estrogen production. Now, I like beef, but I'm not sure I can eat that much beef in a day. So anyhow, that's a little information about that. So, all right, Jennifer, you want to go ahead and move to the next slide? So we've got another fib or fact for you. And so that question is, not using antibiotics to treat meat animals would better protect public health. So fib or fact on that one? What do you guys think? Fib, 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 fib. All right, Johnny's right. We've got a real smart group here today. So Jennifer, what's the next slide? So fib, absolutely. And so just some information about that. Antibiotics are sometimes used to treat animals that are sick. I know we have had some animals that have become sick on our farm. And so a lot of times it is an illness that's caused by some sort of bacteria. And so antibiotics is the treatment of choice to try and get them better. To not treat them would be an animal welfare concern. They are in our care. And so we feel like we have to do the best thing we can to keep them healthy, to keep them alive and productive, and that we don't want them to suffer because of whatever they may have going on. Just like if any of you have children, your child gets sick, you take them to the doctor. A lot of times, antibiotics is the treatment of choice for whatever is going on with your child. So antibiotics are used quite often as a tool to help animals get better when they are sick. There are several antibiotics available for use in livestock production, and most of those antibiotics, I think, Jennifer, if you want to go to the next slide, are not typically used in human medicine. And so you can see a list there. So, I mean, we've all heard of penicillins. And so penicillins, 44% of the penicillins used in this country are used by humans, only 6% are by animals. And then if you go down to the bottom of that list, you see that the numbers kind of switch. And some of the tetracyclines, 44% of them used in the United States are used in animals, but only 4% are used in humans. So a lot of times the antibiotics that are used in livestock production are not medically important to humans. That last category down there, ionophores, you can see none of those are used in human medicine because it's not really an antibiotic. So there's been some changes made over the years to try and make antibiotic use more in livestock production more judicious. Veterinarians have to be involved for the vast majority of antibiotics that are used in animals to make sure that it is the right antibiotic for the problem that the animal is having, so that the right dosages can be used. The other thing that I wanted to point out, and probably most people are aware of this, is that the USDA does testing at the harvest facilities randomly to look for any antibiotic residue that may be in the meat. Because livestock are raised by humans. Humans can make mistakes. Maybe we didn't get the right animal marked as having gotten an injection or an injection of antibiotics. So mistakes do happen from time to time. But I looked it up before we got on the webinar today, and the amount of positive antibiotic residue tests is 0.8%. So very, very minimal amount of antibiotic residue found in meat animals that go through the processing chain here in the United States. The other thing is a lot of folks are also worried about antibiotics in milk. I grew up on a dairy farm. We used to milk cows, so I'm very familiar with all this. And so I can say with fairly high certainty that there is absolutely no antibiotics in any milk that you consume in this country, because when the milk truck comes to the dairy farm and picks that load of milk up, they take a sample of that particular dairy farm's milk. They do a quick test on it right there to make sure there's no antibiotic residue in the milk. They keep that sample with them and take it back to the processing facility where they run kind of a more sensitive test, I guess you could say, and look for any antibiotics that are in that milk. If for some reason it passes that quick test on the farm and they get it to the processing plant and they find that, milk from my farm tested positive, it has now been mixed with all the other milk that was picked up from maybe other farms. So maybe it came to my farm, picked up my milk, then it went to Johnny's farm, picked up the milk from his farm, went to Jennifer's farm, picked up the milk from her farm. So now both Johnny's milk and Jennifer's milk has been contaminated with my milk and the antibiotics that was in mine. I now have to pay Johnny and Jennifer for their milk. Theirs cannot be used, mine cannot be used. It's not their fault that my milk contaminated theirs. I have to pay them for the value of that milk. That's not cheap. And I think you get you can make a mistake a couple of times, and then after that, you will lose your contract with the milk processing company. So it's a very rigorous system to make sure there are no antibiotics in milk. So, okay, kind of got off on my little soapbox there. Go ahead, Jennifer. Next slide, please. And this may be you. Yep.
Yeah. So now getting back to food labels a little bit more. So here's another fib or fact. A product labeled gluten-free means it's better for me. What do you guys think? Fib or fact?
Fib.
Yes, that is a fib, but you'd be surprised how often I get asked this question, or how often I hear people just assuming that it's, gluten-free means it's better for them. So no, that's not the case. In fact, you're only supposed to be eating a gluten-free diet if you are, allergic to gluten, or if you have an intolerance of gluten. It's not a diet that any registered dietitian will tell you to go on, because there are 5 food groups and grains are one of them. And for it to be gluten-free, that means that this product doesn't have any of the proteins from wheat, barley, or rye. Now, unfortunately, you'll see products labeled in the store. They're trying to build off the popularity of gluten-free. And so they'll label their products gluten-free, such as I've seen that label on peanut butter. I've seen it on poultry products. Poultry it's a meat. It has no grain in it. It has no gluten in it. So for them to put the gluten-free label on it is completely false advertisement, because of course it's gluten-free. It's not a grain product. Same kind of a thing with peanut butter, but they know that, hey, gluten-free is this craze that everybody wants, or people think it's healthy for them. So if I just put this extra label on here, more people are going to buy my product. And unfortunately, people have been proving them right. But no, gluten-free is not healthier for you. If you are gluten-free. I'm glad now that there are more products available. They typically have a section in the grocery store that's actually labeled gluten-free section. So it's easier to find more of these products nowadays. So our next fib or fact question is it more affordable? It is more affordable to eat fast food than healthy, fresh food. So what do you guys think? And again, this is something I hear all
Fib.
the time. So I'm glad to see that most of you guys are saying fib in the chat. That's correct. But again, you'll be surprised when I ask people, well, why do you eat, I don't want to say so poorly, but why do you eat so much fast food? Well, I can't, it's too expensive to buy the fresh, healthy, vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. So that's why I teach my workshops is I talk about budgeting with regards to your food. There's a lot of different types of food. You can eat your canned food, your fresh food, or your frozen food. Oftentimes your canned and your frozen products are even cheaper than your fresh produce. Or as we've already kind of mentioned, you can grow your own too. Go buy some seeds. Don't ask me how to grow them. That's a Johnny question. Miss Kim put in the chat that her fast food meal was $9 the other day. No, that's not inexpensive. That's not cheap. I often tell people, eat what you want to eat, but cook it yourself. So if you want Bojangles fried chicken and whatever you want that, cook it yourself. You can buy a whole big old family style flat of chicken for $9 and get the sides. Basically, you're making your own tailgate, but you can make it cheaper than you could if you just went and got one meal. And afterwards, a lot of times that meal that you go out at fast food doesn't really fill you up. By 3 o'clock, I'm hungry again. And then I'm also cranky when I look at my checkbook and I see how much money I spent on fast food this year. So if you are interested in, trying to cut down on your food budget, again, I have other resources, or I've already taught another workshop for that. I can share that webinar with you as well. So yes, that is a fib. So our next fib or fact question is bacteria on meat and poultry, whether it's resistant or not, is destroyed through cooking. So when you cook your meat or poultry, are you able to kill the bacteria? That's what it wants to ask you. So this is a food safety question. The bacteria that's on your meat can be killed through cooking. Okay. Look at the chat. Okay. I can tell who works for Extension, Keyshawn. You put a very food safety science of your answer. So yes, it is a fact. You can kill the bacteria on your meat, but Keyshawn was correct if you cook it to the right temperature. Okay, so that's why I'm always talking to people about buying a food thermometer, a digital thermometer that you insert inside the thickest part of the meat to make sure that it's gotten up to the temperature. So, making sure that you're doing that is very important. Poultry products need to be cooked to 165 degrees. So, I mean, that includes your turkey, your duck, any bird, any poultry, 165 degrees. If you have a steak or chop, seafood, those, your porks, those meats can be cooked to 145, okay? Your ground beef, so you took that steak and that chop that could be cooked at 145 and you've taken it and you've ground it up into ground beef. And so you've taken any bacteria that might have been on the outside of that steak and now it's all in the middle of that big ball of ground meat. So you have to cook it to 155. So most of the stuff, your roasts, your chops, your steaks, your pork, your seafood, 145. Your ground beef is 155. And then all of your poultry products, ground or not, are going to be 165. Miss Nancy, did you have a question? I saw your hand raised. Did you type it in the chat? Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay. Okay. If you have a question, just yeah, put it in the chat there. Okay. So I think we're back to Johnny. Kim, I can't.
No, I think it's me.
He just started his video all of a sudden. I thought it was you, but he popped on his video and I was like, maybe it's Johnny. Okay.
I had to unmute myself before I started talking. So now we're going to jump into some of these food label claims, and Johnny touched on a couple of them earlier, and we're going to go through some of these so that hopefully we can educate you guys, if you don't already know, on what some of these mean and whether or not it's truly beneficial to look for these claims. So Jennifer, next slide, please. So there are several types of label claims that are out there: unverified, verified, USDA verified, third-party verified, and then I think there's variable. So we're going to try and go through these to some extent and kind of explain to you what we mean by those. And you could see some images up there of some of the different claims that you may see on some packaging: certified vegan, non-GMO project, friend of the sea, and fair trade certified. So those are some labels that you may see on various products that you can purchase at the grocery store. So Jennifer, if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So here's a label. I think somebody actually may have made this up just looking at the address, Elsewhere, Virginia. I feel that's probably a made up town. But you can see over on the top hand right, there's lots of claims up there. They've got the USDA organic symbol, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but then there's grass-fed, free range, no added antibiotics, no added hormones administered, source verified, and traceable to TMB Ranch. So that's a lot of information. And what does that all really mean? And is it important to you? It seems like a lot of the confusion surrounding label claims or with the labels on things like meat and dairy products and egg products. So maybe we can straighten or explain some of this a little bit to you guys. So next slide, please, Jennifer. So a lot of times these label claims typically refer to one of three things: how the animal was raised, so what kind of conditions it was on the farm or prior to it being harvested, what that animal ate, and how that animal was processed. And so some of those claims may refer, some of the label claims may refer back to one of these three categories. So I'll ask you to move on to the next slide, Jennifer. So again, here's some common food label claims that we may see. We've talked about GMO, and you can see there's the non-GMO project, verified non-GMO project, kind of the square box with the butterfly on it. But if you look over to the right too, there's non-GMO in a circle. So what do they both mean? The same thing? What's the difference? There's grass-fed in the bottom right. There's Food Alliance certified organic products. So again, they've got the organic product 100% over on the top far left, but then two over to the right, there's the black circle with the green and white USDA organic. So do those two labels mean the same thing? So we'll go ahead and move to the next slide, please, Jennifer. So antibiotic free or raised without antibiotics. So if you go ahead and move to the next slide. So these, sorry, I was thinking we were still back on the fib and fact, got ahead of myself. So this kind of means the same thing. I mean, antibiotic free and raised without antibiotics typically implies that the animal in question, the product from the animal in question, has not received any antibiotics, whether that was antibiotics for a time when the animal was sick or an antibiotic that may have been given to help it be more efficient and productive. So a lot of folks that are in antibiotic-free programs, if they do end up with an animal that's sick and they need to treat that animal with an antibiotic so that it can get better, and then they do comply with animal welfare to make sure they're doing the best job they can raising that animal, they will tag that animal in some fashion and maybe move it to a different part of their farm so that it does not go into the antibiotic free line. They may have another means of marketing that animal, but it comes out of the antibiotic-free program. So unfortunately, this is not a excuse me, a claim that can be verified. Every now and then, excuse me, you may see that on the label that it will say that it was third party verified by such and such. That can give the claim a little bit more validity, because hopefully some sort of third party has gone in and looked at records and verified that that farm has indeed not treated animals with antibiotics. But unfortunately, it's not something that is always verifiable. People can just put this claim on the label without you knowing as the consumer if it's absolutely true or not. And as I mentioned before, with the residue testing done by USDA, that's not really something that you need to worry about when you're consuming meat produced in this country. Okay, now we can move to the next slide. So no added hormones. We've kind of talked about hormones earlier and their use in livestock production. One thing that really drives me crazy is when that people will put on their label, no hormones. Every living being has hormones in it. You have hormones, I have hormones, my cows at home have hormones because they are living beings. They have hormones in there. That's just the way they are made. The claim should be, as this one is labeled here, no added hormones, or no hormones administered, to be more accurate in terms of what they've done. But to say no hormones is just completely incorrect, because that animal has hormones in it just from the day it was born. A lot of plants have hormones in it because they are living beings. Again, this is a claim that cannot really be verified. Again, sometimes you may have third-party organizations that can go into that farm, look at records, and verify that they indeed have not added any hormones. There are some programs out there that farmers can participate in with certain companies, and those companies, that is one of their stipulations for raising animals for them, is that you don't use any additional hormones. So a lot of times that paperwork can be tracked and proven, and so that can be like a third party verifiable claim. But if you just see like this green rectangle down here that says no added hormones, it doesn't indicate that it was verified by a third party. Somebody could just slap that label on there, and we don't know if it's true or not. Okay, next slide. And so this is a prime example. I think I mentioned earlier that in the United States, chickens that are raised in this country cannot be given hormones in production. Neither can pork. So to have a label that states that there's no added hormones, okay, that's technically true, but it would have been illegal for them to do that to begin with. So like Jennifer mentioned with the whole gluten-free label, they're just playing off of that that kind of buzzword and people looking for those things, where pork and chicken in this country is not raised with any added hormones. So paying extra for a product that has that label on it, if it's chicken and pork, is not necessary, because there's no chicken or pork that's raised in this country that has been given additional hormones. Another thing I really like is if you look down there in that bottom left-hand corner, it says 100% vegetarian feed. Well, chickens aren't carnivores. They don't eat any meat. So again, just trying to make it more appealing to the consumer when it really has no basis for that statement on there. Okay, next slide. Okay, so non-GMO, Johnny touched on what GMO means. And so this is kind of a big buzzword. A lot of people don't like the idea of things being genetically modified. We're not going to get into the discussion of whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But just know that this is something that if you see that symbol over there on the left-hand side with the little butterfly on that little plant, and it's got that big word in there, verified, then that means that that product has gone through the third-party verification to truly say, yes, the ingredients in this particular product are not derived from anything from a GMO crop. The one on the right, it doesn't say anything about being verified. So you don't know if that's really true or not. And so along with what Jennifer was saying with the gluten-free claim on products that may not necessarily need it, I like Triscuit crackers. And so I'll buy Triscuit crackers from time to time. And they have this logo on the left-hand side, the one with the butterfly on the front of their box. It says non-GMO project verified. And I'm going, Triscuits are made from wheat. Wheat is not a GMO crop. Why are they putting this on there? And so as I'm bringing it up now, I thought, well, I'm gonna bring this up in the webinar today. So I actually went to the website, looked at the label for Triscuits, and they have canola oil in them. And as Johnny mentioned earlier, canola can be a genetically modified crop. So, I guess technically they are accurate in saying that they're, not using any GMO ingredients in their product. But until I looked at that label and saw that it had canola in it, I thought that it was just one of those things. They're just trying to play off everybody's emotion and that whole buzzword of non-GMOs. But so read the label, look at the ingredients, because sometimes those ingredients may not even be things that are made from those 10 GMO crops. So just keep that in mind. But this is something that the non-GMO, it's kind of a verifiable claim. USDA does have some guidance, but again, a lot of times it's verified by a third party. Okay, so moving on, we've got grass-fed and grass-finished. So a lot of times this can be very confusing as to what this means. And so technically grass-fed implies that the animal ate an exclusive diet of grass after weaning. So after it was no longer nurses its mom, and that it had access to pasture its entire life. So that's implied. But again, these are not necessarily verifiable claims. Grass finished may mean that the animal was on pasture, but it got a percentage of grain while it was on pasture. So again, you don't know exactly what these mean. There's some guidance that has been published, but again, it's not set in stone. USDA does not have any, I guess they could take regulatory effects, but they have not, because it's so hard to define exactly what this means. So in the case of the two labels, you've got the one over on the left, this is certified grass-fed by AWA, and I think that is Animal Welfare Alliance, I think is what the AWA stands for. So you can make the assumption that somebody has looked at paperwork or some production records or something from the farm that produced this beef and that has met their definition, AWA's definition of grass-fed. But again, you don't know exactly what AWA's definition of grass-fed is. Whereas the one on the right, okay, it says it's grass-fed and grass-finished, but who says it? And what do their definitions mean of those two things? Did they spend all of their life on pasture? Did they get a certain percent of grain? Did they get a certain percentage of pasture time? And a lot of people think that grass-fed and or grass-finished beef is healthier for you because of the omega-3 fats that are in it. And while compared to traditional grain-finished beef, it does have a higher level of omega-3s in it. But if your goal in your diet plan is to increase your omega-3s, then beef is probably not what you need to eat. You probably need to eat some more fish type products to increase those omega-3s. So again, yes, grass-fed has more omega-3s than grain-fed, but it doesn't have a lot that's going to increase your total omega-3 intake, if that makes any sense. Okay, moving on to the next slide, please, ma'am. And so pasture raised and free range. So again, what does this mean? And you can see over on the left-hand side, it's a carton of eggs. So you're going, okay, great. These chickens that laid these eggs were free range. They were never in any coops or in a barn or anything like that. Well, again, you don't know the definition of either of those terms by these companies. So there is, not far from where we live, there's several people who raise chickens for some of the various companies. And their definition of pasture raised is that the birds have access to pasture. There's no making sure they're out there for so many hours a day. There's no, they're only outside. They're never inside of a barn. There's lots of variations and no clear definition as to what these terms mean. So again, without knowing what that looks like, Vital Farms on that carton, without knowing what Vital Farms means by pasture raised, you don't know exactly how these chickens were raised. So just keep that in mind. Again, this is an unverified claim. You don't know if that information is, you don't know what the definitions are, and there's nobody that says that they really did truly follow those guidelines and regulations to either be pasture raised or free range. Okay, on to the next slide. All natural. So this is a really interesting one. Again, unverified claim. A lot of times, I mean, this can mean how the animal was raised, how the animal was processed, any additives that may have been added to that meat to help with shelf life or anything like that. So this is just, I mean, there's all sorts of questions with this. You just don't even know what it means. And again, there's no third-party person that has said that this particular product is truly 100% natural. I mean, everything is, it's just got those words there, but who says those words are true and real? We don't know. So again, you just have to kind of educate yourself to try and understand what some of these terms mean. And just because that claim is on there, who verified that claim? You know, did USDA verify it, or did some other third-party organization verify that? If it says USDA organic, which I'm getting to next, so go ahead and change the slide, Jennifer. Then USDA organic, that is a verifiable claim. As Johnny mentioned earlier, farmers who are trying to either go organic or be organic, they have to go through a very rigorous process. Land has to be not treated with synthetic pesticides and other things that they deem outside of the organic regulations for 3 years. They have to submit paperwork. Somebody comes out there every year to look at that paperwork and make sure everything has been followed. So this is something that is, if it's got that symbol that's over there on the left, the USDA organic symbol, you can take that to the bank. It is truly USDA organic. The one on the right, I don't know, it says certified, but it doesn't say who it was certified by. So, I would say I would question the one over on the right. The one on the left, we can, like I said, we can take that to the bank. That is true. The one on the right, you just have to wonder who said it was truly certified. So those are some of the label claims that are out there. So again, my thoughts would be just educate yourself, try and understand what they're meaning. And if any of you go to the farmers markets or deal directly with producers of either meat or vegetables or whatnot, a lot of times these certifications or these claims, if you just talk to the producer and find out how they produce their product, you'll get your questions answered and find out whether or not they produce the product in a way that you like and are willing to pay for. So sometimes just having a conversation with that producer, if you can go a long way. So, and I think that was the last of my slides.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm just going to kind of wrap us up here. So yeah, Kim's definitely correct. If there's a question, you're at a farmer's market, ask the farmer. They love to talk about it. And if they have gone through all the rigorous process to get that, USD organic label, trust me, they don't mind answering your questions about it, because they had to work for it. So just also to consider when we're talking about food, we want to talk about food waste. So I just have a couple of quick slides just to kind of show you. if I had asked you a question about where in the process of that food system cycle that I showed you at the beginning, do you think we waste the most food? You might have said, oh, in the production side or the distribution or something. Actually, it's completely with us as consumers. 40% of the food loss that we have occurs with us. We have wasted it. We haven't used it. Maybe we didn't use all of it. It started to rot, whatever, and we threw it away. So that is a very, very big problem for many different reasons. So America is not eating 40% of the food that we have. We throw out, in fact, more than 1,250 calories per day per person. Okay, so that's a lot of calories. That's about half of maybe what you might eat in a day. You've thrown that many calories out. So over the course of a year, that equates to about 400 pounds of food. So I know there's been a lot of food drives lately, thinking about how much food, how much help that could do for people if we could donate 400 pounds of food instead of throwing it away. So, and that's part of the problem. We waste so much food, but we have over 42 million people facing food insecurity. They're not sure where their next meal is going to come from. So less than 1/3 of that food that we waste could feed those 42 million people. So if we just wasted a little bit less, then we could feed everyone. So, it's something to think about. And again, that's not just everything. Food and agriculture consume up to 16% of the energy in the US, almost 1/2 of the lands in the United States, and also 67% of our nation's freshwater use. So if we are wasting those resources, then, we're using the land, the water, and all this energy for nothing. If we're throwing all the food away, then we're using all these resources and we're not getting the result from it. So we need to make sure that all of the hard work that our farmers are, doing, all of the energy that we're using, all of the land that we're using, that we're putting it to its best uses. And we're being good stewards of the environment, making sure that we're doing our part as consumers and we're not wasting the food. So it's not going to nothing. So thinking about what you can do. There's a variety of different things that we can do. There are some food share programs at local farmers markets that you might not need the food, but instead of the farmer not being able to sell it and throw it away, you could help them by purchasing some, and they'll donate it to the local food pantry. So there's different things that you can do, making sure that you're just purchasing what you need. You purchase canned or frozen instead of all this fresh food. If you're going to end up throwing it away. Meal planning can help you prepare better. So things that you can do at home is just being mindful. Are you going to eat this? And when do you plan to eat it? Don't buy it if you don't have plans to cook it sometime within the next week. Keeping your refrigerator properly at the proper temperature. So a lot of times your food may just rot because your temperature is too warm in your refrigerator. So keeping your refrigerator at 40 degrees or lower will help keep your food fresh longer. You can also freeze food instead of throwing it away. I know instead of throwing my rotten bananas away, maybe we'll put them in the freezer and we'll use them for banana bread eventually, or smoothies. Making sure that you're looking at the dates on the foods and understanding what those dates mean. So you don't start checking the dates and you're already way past the usage date. I'm going to talk about those product dates. So most of these are not it's a quality thing. It's not a food safety concern, really. It's more of a quality thing. So you have best by, use by, and sale by are the 3 dates you'll see on your products. Best by means that if you use this product, the manufacturer is guaranteeing that this is going to be the best product if you use it by this date. Okay. It's going to be the freshest. It's going to taste the way that, it's supposed to taste if you use it by this date. Sell by, that's how long the store can have it, on their shelf. So they kind of have that quality built into that sell by date so that you will have the best quality when you have it at home on your shelf life, because you don't want to, have the sell by date be the best by date, because then you have to go home and immediately eat it. So, and then the use by date is the last date that they recommend for use. Again, it's just a quality. You can eat the stale crackers if you want to, but this is the date. Again, they're just kind of guaranteeing, but none of these are safety dates. In fact, there are no really expiration dates on anything except baby formula. That's really the only thing that has a date that you need to stick by with it. Other things, again, I mean, your milk's going to turn, your bread will turn, but sometimes it will turn before that date that's on there. Sometimes it'll go bad, a week or two after that date. You just, you never know. So hopefully we've been able to answer a lot of your questions. After this presentation, again, I'm going to send you the recording of it. I'm also going to send you the contact information for myself and Kim and Johnny if you have any other questions that might be a little bit more specific to one of us. But before I let you go, I do want to let you know about our upcoming. My next Lunch and Learn is going to be on Tuesday, April 6th, and it's going to be about understanding your nutritional labels. So we talked about kind of all the labels on your food. Now we're going to talk about the nutrition labels. And then that same day, I think Johnny and Kim y'all have a guest speaker that's coming or going to be on Zoom to talk about fire ants. So I will send you the registration links for both of these workshops. So if you want to register for either of them or both of them, please feel free to do that. I don't see any questions popping up in the chat. If anybody has anything else, otherwise, we also will send you a couple of handouts in the email as well. A couple of the slides kind of had different pictures or images, and we want to make sure you can see those. So we're going to share the handout with you that image came with. Okay.
So Jennifer, Regina did have a question a little bit earlier when I was talking. So she asked, so what is the advantage of buying from Food Lion versus Whole Foods, Sprouts, Aldi's, and Lidl's? And so I'm not real familiar with Sprouts, Aldi's, or Lidl's, so I don't know that I can speak to that. And I would say, you need to buy your groceries from someplace that is convenient for you and has the products that you're looking for, and you feel good about the quality that they serve. Everybody can shop where they want to. I typically shop at Food Lion because it's convenient to me. It's close to here, my work in Person County. There's one not too far from my home. Aldi's and Lidl's, they're not anywhere close to where I either work or live, so it's not real convenient for me to go to either one of those. I do go to I live north of Hillsborough, so Hillsborough's not far from me, but I do go to Weaver Street Market in Hillsborough because they do carry a couple products that I like that's not really available anywhere else. One of them is the milk that I like. They also have lots of cheeses. I'm a dairy farmer's daughter, so I love cheese. And they have some really good ice cream. So I go there for some specific items. So Regina, I'm not sure if that answers your question any at all, but again, I would say cost and convenience and quality of products needs to be your deciding factor of where you shop for groceries.
Yeah, I would kind of, echo the same thing. I have people that will ask about specifically like organic or something, because like, oh, well, Whole Foods has a lot of this, or Aldi's has a lot of this, or whatever. And to me, that's just kind of a personal preference. We have a whole nother workshop on the difference between conventional and organic. And basically, it's like there's no difference in nutrition. Johnny kind of talked about pesticides, that all of them have an amount of pesticide, but they're all within the proper ranges. So if pesticide is something you're really concerned about, then go somewhere that has a good spread of organic. But I don't notice a taste difference. I don't notice there's definitely not a nutrition difference. So it's just kind of a personal preference. You might notice a taste difference in something or another. Organic typically costs more. Not always, but a lot of places that I go. So cost is important to me because I have, young children. So I'm on a budget. So to me, cost and, convenience, as Kim mentioned, those two are going to be the things that are going to make me go to the store or not.
Yeah, and you mentioned organic being more expensive, Jennifer. It normally is. It does cost more to raise organic. Usually, an organic farmer is going to lose 20 to 25% of its yield versus a conventional farmer. So you're not going to produce as much product on the land that you would raising conventionally. So prices would have to adjust for that.
And being that it's Small Farms Week, again, you know, all three of us are going to tell you, go support your local farmer. There's a lot of produce stands, farmers markets, or farms that you can go visit. I'll send in the email as well. There is a Visit NC Farms app, and you can, you know, kind of look at all the different farms in your area. And some of them, you know, they'll tell you where the farms are that you can go visit. They'll tell you where the farmers markets or the, you know, farm stores or different little things are, and you can make a day trip or plan something with your family. Okay. Well, I think that's all the questions.
Put a couple of links in the chat, Jennifer, if anybody wants to know, learn more about GMO products or pesticide residual on your products. It's a couple of links in the chat to visit if you'd like.
And I got them out of the chat, so I'll also put them in the email too. So if you guys didn't get a chance to go look at those websites, you can when I send them to you. Okay. Well, thank you to everyone for attending, and hopefully you learned at least one new thing today. And we look forward to having you back at one of our other future workshops. Thanks again for attending.